Good evening. Today, the United States informed us they will be imposing 25% tariffs on Canadian exports to the United States and 10% on Canadian energy. A decision that, should they elect to proceed with, should take effect on Tuesday, February 4th.
As Donald Trump continues to threaten tariffs and to make Canada the 51st state, Canadians have been debating whether to travel stateside.
You're asking the likes of Brazil or ASEAN countries, what are they saying? The same thing, diversify. Don't be at the mercy of the dollar or the U.S. financial system.
For years, the United States has held a dominant position in global trade, especially when it comes to the automotive and energy sectors. But in a shocking turn of events, Canada and Mexico have just flipped the script. With a series of bold economic moves, they're shaking up trade policies, shifting energy alliances, and forcing the U.S. to rethink its entire strategy. And the craziest part? This isn't just about trade, it's about power. The U.S. is now facing a reality it never expected, and if Washington doesn't act fast, it could lose its grip on industries that have fueled its economy for decades. But here's where things get even crazier.
Let's talk about what's going on right now in travel, because we know there's been a push to buy Canadian. We have seen Canadians booing the U.S. anthem over the last week or so. But have we been seeing a lot of cancellations and are travel plans changing for Canadians?
So that's a really interesting question, because in a short answer is we haven't seen a lot of cancellations, and that's because the people who have made their bookings, many of them are at final payment. Where we've been seeing the cancellations are where people are in deposit stage, where they won't be losing a lot of money. And because we live right along the border, a lot of people are choosing not to do those day trips across the border for gas or shopping, going and doing their Trader Joe's and Target type runs. But it's for the new bookings. Anyone who's looking to make a new booking, we're hearing a lot more people say, I'll go anywhere except the U.S. And I think this is going to stay that way until President Trump stops taking punches at Canada. The other thing is the U.S. travel industry came out saying that
it all started with an unexpected tariff bombshell. Reports suggest that Canada and Mexico may have slapped a 25% tariff on U.S. imports, a move that could send shockwaves through American manufacturing.
For U.S. security, such as nickel, potash, uranium, steel, and aluminum, they will violate the free trade agreement that the President and I, along with our Mexican partner, negotiated and signed a few years ago. But it doesn't have to be this way. As President John F. Kennedy said many years ago, geography has made us neighbors, history has made us friends, economics has made us partners, and necessity has made us allies. That rang true for many decades prior to President Kennedy's time in office, and in the decades since.
While the details are still emerging, if true, this would be a game changer. Instead of relying on traditional trade agreements, these two nations are showing that control over supply chains is the real power move. And it makes perfect sense. The automotive industry, in particular, depends on thousands of precisely manufactured parts from all over the world. If a tariff this high actually takes effect, manufacturers could be forced to completely rethink their supply chains, leading to higher prices, slower production, and a massive industry shakeup. But that's just the beginning.
Close to 10% of vehicles on the road in the U.S. were made in Canada, but they're not at all completely Canadian products. The industry is so integrated between this country and our neighbors to the south that before a vehicle is assembled, the parts are estimated to have crossed the border up to 8 times. And it's not new. This plant in Windsor, Ontario has been making cars since 1928.
The trade that we have between Canada and the United States is fair trade. It's fair, free trade. We aren't the source of the angst.
Rather than reacting with panic, Canada and Mexico played this crisis like chess masters. Instead of launching reckless trade wars, they made calculated counter moves, targeting U.S. goods in sectors where it would hurt the most. Canada, for instance, didn't just slap tariffs across the board. It strategically applied pressure on politically sensitive industries, ensuring that the pain would be felt exactly where it needed to be. Meanwhile, Mexico took a completely different route, out, choosing long-term strength over short-term retaliation. Instead of just fighting back, it began executing a detailed blueprint to diversify its supply chains, making sure it would never again be too dependent on any single market. This wasn't just about sending a message, it was about future-proofing their economies, and you won't believe what they did next.
The U.S. travel industry came out saying that even a mere 10% of people dropping their trips, like as Canadians going into the U.S., it has a huge effect, $2.1 billion, and it could potentially affect 14,000 jobs. So it does make a difference.
Canada, knowing that relying on the US had its risks, decided to change the game entirely. Rather than staying locked into a one-sided trade relationship, it began aggressively expanding its partnerships across Europe, Asia, and beyond. This move is especially important for industries like electric vehicles and high-tech manufacturing, where a reliable and diverse supply chain is everything. Think of it like upgrading a car's engine to handle any road. It's a smart move that ensures stability even in uncertain times. And while Canada was securing new trade partners, Mexico was taking things even further.
Compared to before, while U.S. is declining. So I think China's response is, while U.S. is kind of going back, they're going to open up as much as possible. So this is why Premier Li has repeatedly said unilateral opening up, zero tariffs on the least developing countries.
What Ke Yu-jin just said there cannot be understated. All of these new industries China is leading in, electric vehicles, solar panels, high-speed rail, very little of that is actually going to the United States. If you're in the US, just look around. You won't see a single Chinese EV on the road, but in places like Thailand, Australia, and Brazil, Chinese automakers are absolutely dominating the market. Now let's take a look at the top 20 fastest growing economies on Earth. Every single one of them is in the global South. Hotspots like the Middle East, North Africa, Asia Pacific, and Sub-Saharan Africa. Meanwhile, not a single American or European country is on that list. Many Western economies are stuck at 0 to 3% growth, teetering on the edge of recession. And who is the #1 trading partner for every single one of these rising economies? You guessed it, China. China hasn't just dominated the fastest growing regions, it's become the largest trading partner for the majority of the world. That is why China can withstand this tariff war far better than the US.
Mexico has been quietly but aggressively reshaping its economy. Instead of waiting for the US to dictate trade terms, it began signing new agreements with economic powerhouses like the European Union, China, and South America. And here's where it gets even more intense. China is watching this trade shift very closely. With Canada and Mexico looking to diversify their economic ties, China sees an opening to strengthen its foothold in North America's supply chains. Chinese automakers and battery manufacturers have already been expanding operations in Mexico, taking advantage of lower production costs and access to US markets. If this trend continues, China could quietly gain significant control over North America's electric vehicle industry, further reducing the US's influence. This isn't just about trade anymore, it's about who will dominate the future of automotive technology and energy.
Simply put, China has a plethora of options. But it doesn't stop there. It's not just about who's growing, it's also about who's declining. Western economies are not what they once were. The average American, and European for that matter, simply doesn't have the same disposable income they had decades ago. And this trend is only getting worse. That is going to be a massive problem for Trump because his biggest leverage in this trade war is supposed to be the US consumer market. But what happens when that market isn't as powerful as it used to be? That only leaves the industrial sector, where the US is simply no match for China. Now don't get me wrong, this trade war will bring short-term pain to both economies, but only one country has the long-term runway to stick the landing.
Mexico is making sure that no single country, not even the US, can hold its economy hostage. But here's where things take a shocking turn. Mexico isn't just changing who it trades with, it's changing how it trades. Right now, Mexico is modernizing its infrastructure at a speed no one expected. New ports, expanded rail networks, and alternative trade routes are being developed at a record pace. The goal? To become an independent trade powerhouse. This means that for industries like automotive manufacturing, Mexico will have a more resilient supply chain, making it an even more attractive place for global companies to invest. And just when you thought it couldn't get worse for the US, the aftershocks of these moves are already hitting American industries hard.
Up and comer.
We're all worried about China, and this is like going into a race against a top sprinter but breaking your own foot on purpose.
Even if tariffs did force jobs back to the US, a trade war would hurt companies in that country. Almost 40% of the vehicles and parts produced by the U.S. are bought by Canada. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
The U.S. is starting to feel the pain of these decisions in ways that can't be ignored. With Canada and Mexico shifting their trade focus, American supply chains are being exposed like never before. In the auto industry alone, delays in receiving essential parts are stalling production lines, increasing costs, and creating massive uncertainty. And it's not just cars, this is spreading into technology, consumer goods, and even food prices. Everything from electronics to everyday essentials is becoming more expensive as these trade shifts ripple through the economy. But wait, there's another crisis brewing that could make things even worse.
Des deux côtés de la frontière. Tonight, first, I want to speak directly to Americans, our closest friends and neighbors. This is a choice that, yes, will harm Canadians, but beyond that, it will have real consequences for you, the American people. As I have consistently said, tariffs against Canada will put your jobs at risk, potentially shutting down American auto assembly plants and other manufacturing facilities. They will raise costs for you, including food at the grocery stores and gas at the pump. They will impede your access to an affordable supply of vital goods crucial for U.S. security, such as nickel, potash, uranium, steel, and aluminum. They will violate the free trade agreement that the President and I, along with our Mexican partner, negotiated and signed a few years ago.
While all of this is happening in trade, a financial and energy showdown is unfolding in the background. Canada is making a major shift away from the US dollar, integrating alternative currencies like the euro and yuan into its key trade agreements. At the same time, Mexico is deliberately devaluing its peso to make its exports even more competitive. These aren't just small financial adjustments, this is a direct challenge to US economic dominance. If more countries start moving away from the dollar in trade, the impact on the American economy could be massive. But that's not even the worst part.
During the Iranian hostage crisis, those 444 days we worked around the clock from our embassy to get your innocent compatriots home. During the summer of 2005, when Hurricane Katrina ravaged your great city of New Orleans, or mere weeks ago, when we sent water bombers to tackle the wildfires in California. During the day the world stood still, September 11th, 2001, when we provided refuge to stranded passengers and planes, we were always there, standing with you, grieving with you, the American people.
The energy sector is now being thrown into complete disarray. Canada is rerouting its oil exports, Mexico is shifting its natural gas supplies, and the U.S. energy network is starting to feel the pressure. Higher fuel costs, increased strain on infrastructure, and growing uncertainty are making it harder for U.S. industries to operate smoothly. For sectors like automotive manufacturing, which depend on stable energy prices, this is creating serious long-term risks. And if you think this is just a temporary issue, think again, because the global trade map is being rewritten right now.
Une relation qui a été la source de tellement de richesse, de prospérité et de possibilités des deux côtés de la frontière. Tonight, first, I want to speak directly to Americans, our closest friends and neighbors. This is a choice that, yes, will harm Canadians, but beyond that, it will have real consequences for you, the American people. As I have consistently said, tariffs against Canada will put your jobs at risk.
Canada and Mexico's moves aren't just small adjustments, they are reshaping global trade as we know it. The days of U.S. economic dominance in North America are being challenged like never before. From Mexico's aggressive economic overhaul to Canada's strategic trade realignments, every decision being made is part of a calculated effort to shift global power away from the U.S. This isn't just about tariffs, it's about who controls the future of trade. And while Washington scrambles to respond, one question remains. Will the U.S. adapt to this changing world, or will it be left behind? The answer to that question will determine not just the future of trade, but the future of American economic power itself. What happens next will change everything. And if you found this video insightful, make sure to like and subscribe for more updates on this unfolding crisis.